Rachel is here to talk with us today about elections that happened recently in Germany. And Rachel, just to start out, if you could tell us why these elections were notable, not just for contemporary German politics, but really in a sort of a world historic sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm calling in from Berlin, so have been sort of watching this close up for the last week or so. So basically, Germany, it's a federated state with 16 states, and 2 of those states had elections over this past weekend, Thuringia and Saxony. Now, both of those states are located in the former East Germany, which used to be behind the Iron Curtain, the GDR. And what is super notable about the outcome of these elections is that for the first time since World War II, a far-right party, the Alternative for Germany, or the AfD, won 33% of the vote in Thuringia. So not enough to not need a coalition, but got more votes than all of the other parties. And they came in second at 30% of the vote in Saxony. So this just kind of shows that the results of these elections are concerning, given that the AfD runs on a very anti-immigrant, anti-EU, anti-NATO, anti-Ukraine support, anti a lot of things. And for the first time, they won outright a state election. So that's notable not only for Germany, but for Europe more broadly, and I think globally for the far right as well.
They're so well known for being, for German politics watchers, for being so emphatically anti-immigrant. Some, and I would put myself in this, would say xenophobic. But I think it's important to note that, as some online noted, that Thuringia has one of the lowest levels of immigration in Germany. So can you speak a bit about perhaps anti-immigration sentiment motivating voters in places without immigrants, or with a relatively low level of immigrants compared to elsewhere in Germany?
Well, this is what's interesting, is that we also see this happening in the United States as well. Rural counties around the United States that have fewer immigrants than perhaps more suburban areas, especially on the coasts, are much more homogenous, yet are more anti-immigrant than other states, other counties, other cities. And we sort of see the same thing in Germany. It's a little too unnuanced to say that this is all a result of sort of a post-reunification hangover that begun after the fall of the Soviet Union. It's also too simplistic to say that this is because of things like brain drain and an aging population. But I think there is something more here that has to do with this idea of German identity and how the AfD has successfully played into fears of people who are less exposed to people from other countries and other cultures. Again, I think it's really similar to the sort of fear mongering that we experience in the United States as well, where people that are less familiar with those who come from other places are more susceptible to the sort of caricatures of other cultures and other people, these messages that immigrants are taking jobs and immigrants are committing crimes. And it doesn't help, of course, that there was a terrorist attack just a few days before these elections in Solingen, Germany, that was enacted by a Syrian asylum seeker, someone who was, I think, a self-proclaimed member of ISIS. That didn't really create any differences in the outcome, but I certainly don't think it helped the rhetoric. So it is just sort of an area that's ripe for misinformation and fear-mongering, and that's what we see the AfD do, and they've been able to successfully do it.
I have one more question before I let Rohan speak on this podcast. I was, as our listeners know and may remember, if they even care. No, I was in Germany earlier this summer, talking to people about Holocaust remembrance, and one of the things that came up in the context of German politics today and the AfD is that I want to be careful how I say this, but in some ways, as robust as German memory culture is, it's not necessarily a flexible memory culture. And what I mean by that is you hear people say, like, immigrant families will come from elsewhere to Germany and be told, you're German now, you need to take responsibility for the Holocaust, which of course their families did not carry out. Or, the sense of responsibility in Germany is so tied to, and rightly tied to, this one tragic, horrific event, that perhaps the conditions that led to it, or the ways in which different types of people can end up persecuted by the state or by their neighbors, that this part is missing, right? In other words, when it's not the German state versus the Jews, perhaps Germans aren't as sensitive to it, right? And I guess what I'm saying is, even with Germany's robust memory culture, are immigrants an easier target because memory culture in Germany hasn't adapted really to the demographics of Germany in the 21st century?
I mean, there could be something to that. But what's interesting about memory culture and the AfD, especially with the leader Bjorn Höcke in Thuringen, he basically has said that it has gone too far, that Germans have apologized for long enough and have, sort of self-flagellated for long enough. And he's actually been fined a couple times for using Nazi-era slogans in his rhetoric and in his campaigning. And so I do think that in Germany, it's hard to understand just how much this history is woven through the fabric of German society until you come here and understand that it affects everything from defense spending to Germany's role in Europe, to Germany's role in the world, to Germany's role as an ally. I mean, it really is the thread that runs through a lot of how Germany sees itself as a member of the global community. And certainly, I mean, I don't know enough about this specific topic to know exactly how it translates, but certainly this thread is sewn through German fabric in a way that sort of touches everything.